Welcome to Partners in Care, fostering relationships with Clubhouses to support recovery from serious mental illness. My name is Arvind Sugnanan, and I am a proud member of Fountain House Bronx, and I'm also on the board of directors here at Fountain House. This program is designed to inform and invite medical and mental health professionals to work with a community system of care known as a clubhouse. Today, we are at Fountain House, a clubhouse located right here in New York City. This is just one example of the many clubhouses located in the United States and around the world. Today, we'll hear from experts about the clubhouse community and how it can support the recovery in serious mental illness. In this session, we'll focus on covering the following objectives. 1, we'll describe the ongoing crises in mental health affecting many of our community members. We'll also introduce how integrated care can contribute to the resolution of the problem and the role of community. By the end of our session, we hope that you will be able to identify and describe the importance of adding a community system of care in supporting your work with your clients. Here to get us started, Dr. Jeannie C., the Senior Medical Director of our community right here at Fountain House.
So there is a worldwide crisis in health, and it has to do with people with serious mental illness. And here we define serious mental illness as people who have schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar disorder, or severe major depression. Around the world, and particularly in low and middle income countries, we know that the majority, 76 to 85% of people who have serious mental illness get no treatment at all. Only about 30 countries worldwide have more than 10 psychiatrists per 100,000 people. And even in the US, where we know we have a lot more psychiatrists than most countries, we know that a third of people who have serious mental illness do not get treatment. And unfortunately, matching that, we know that a third of people who are homeless and a third of people who are in prisons have serious mental illness. So what we tried to do was to solve the problem of many people with serious mental illness living their lives in institutions by using medication to help them come out of institutions and live in the community. But we didn't provide the supports that people needed. And so unfortunately, we find that people have gone from one kind of institution, the psychiatric hospitals, to another kind, to prisons and shelters, where again, people sleep many people to one large room and without the kind of care that they at least got in psychiatric hospitals. So this is a crisis that we need to address today. One very concerning problem, and it's a concern for the World Health Organization as well, is the significant excess mortality among people with serious mental illness. People with serious mental illnesses die on average 10 to 15 years earlier than people without these illnesses. And this excess mortality appears to be related primarily to cardiovascular risks, to heart attacks and stroke, the same things that other people suffer from. Part of that issue has been lack of access to care and the effects of the medications we use, and poverty and the access to healthy food and options for self-care. So this has been a real call to action for both psychiatric and medical physical health providers to address this significant mortality risk. So in response to this, the World Health Organization has put forward a vision for integrated care for people with serious mental illness. And what they've described is reaching beyond the health sector, beyond primary care and psychiatry, to provide a full continuum of health promotion, treatment, and rehabilitation services for people with serious mental illness. And what that continuum has to address is the social drivers of health. That not only are we providing traditional healthcare, but we have to look at people's access to food, housing, clothing, and community, which is one thing we're going to highlight today. So the reason why we want to talk about community and Clubhouse as a potential solution to the integrated care crisis is that one reason why people with serious mental illness have difficulty accessing the medical care they need and experience excess mortality is social isolation and loneliness. People with serious mental illnesses experience loneliness about twice as much as other people. Compounding the trauma that many people with serious mental illnesses experience are symptoms like depression, paranoid ideation that make people avoidant and afraid of other people. And that leads to a decreased opportunity to experience social activities and social relationships. And that further exacerbates their symptoms and leads to things like poverty, poor quality of life, and poor physical health. What we know is that loneliness is also associated with psychiatric hospitalization, probably for all of those reasons. And this cycle of going in and out of hospital even further exacerbates the problem of people not being able to be part of social communities. And that's why we have to bring communities that are welcoming of people with serious mental illness. This year, for the first time, the US Surgeon General's report actually called for us to address social connections as an important part of healing for not only people with serious mental illness, but for everyone. That social isolation and loneliness is actually a health threat across the board. Early in my training as a psychiatrist, and that was like 20 years ago, I understood schizophrenia to be something of a life sentence, that you didn't get better from it. And I think in the decades since then, we have discovered and learned more about the ability of people with serious mental illness to make a full recovery. And what does recovery mean? So there is the service-defined definition of recovery, which is more about, remission of symptoms, not having depression, not having hallucinations. In Clubhouses, we talk about a member-defined recovery, where people who have serious mental illnesses are able to engage in a self-directed process of pursuing health and wellness within the context of community so that they can achieve identities and opportunities that are not defined by their illnesses.
People are so welcoming. You just feel really at home. I found friends and family and people who respect me. You really do feel it. There's a magic in the Clubhouse. It really is.
Choice is such a big part of the recovery process at a Clubhouse. Members get to choose when they come, the type of work that they do, and who they want to work with. And I think that's very empowering for members.
It's helping people actually reconnect with what it means to be a human, what it means to imagine a future, what it means to be part of society.
No one should have to suffer alone, and the doors can open. A lot of what Clubhouse does is changing the world's view on mental illness.
And here to tell us more about the Clubhouse model is Dr. Lori D'Angelo, the Executive Director of Magnolia Clubhouse, an incredible Clubhouse community in Cleveland, Ohio.
Well, people who live with mental illness are often living in isolation. And when they join a Clubhouse, they are immediately accepted and belong to a part of a community, something bigger than themselves. And that is so important for people who have lived isolated by their illness, because as a society, we haven't provided the supports to help people move on with their lives and be integrated into the broader society. So the Clubhouse invites people that live with mental illness. It's open to anyone with a mental illness, and the people are needed, and that's another key feature, to operate the club. And members and staff work in partnership to do everything that it takes to meet the needs of the members and help them connect in the broader society. I think medication we find to be helpful, and that's important, but often if people get anything, that's about all they get. And there's no way to rebuild your life if you're not connected to other people and given opportunities to enhance your skills and contribute to society together.
The Clubhouse model offers people living with mental illness opportunities for friendship, for employment, housing, education, and access to medical and psychiatric services in a single, caring, and safe environment. Clubhouses are cost-effective. 1 year at the Clubhouse costs less than a week in the hospital.
I'm a psychiatrist. My job is to make sure your diagnosis is right and make sure I'm treating the symptoms so they create the least barriers and the least limitations on you possible, or create the least distress. That's actually a tiny part of what helps people recover and helps people live the lives they want to live. The rest of it is figuring out how to re-engage in life in a way that makes sense for you. It's recapturing that sense of purpose. The Clubhouse is doing all that. It's helping people actually reconnect with what it means to be a human, what it means to imagine a future, what it means to be part of society.
Central to the Clubhouse model is the work order day. Here with more on that is my good friend and fellow Fountain House member, Craig Bayer.
The work order day is a process by which members are engaged in the work and the socialization activities of the Clubhouse. Professional staff and members work side by side, working toward the common goals of the Clubhouse. And originally, social practitioners help guide you into the work. They're not really your supervisor. They're not taking all the glorious work for themselves and leaving the busy work for the members. It's shared work experience where sometimes the members outshine the staff in terms of their talents and abilities. And sometimes you can walk into a Clubhouse and not even be able to tell the difference between the staff and the members. Well, feeling needed is something that you don't necessarily feel in the workforce, especially if you have a mental illness. You may find yourself in what I call dead-end jobs where the work is not fulfilling. It's repetitive, grunt work, which you're doing over and over and over again. It wears you down mentally and sometimes physically. There's no meaning in it because you're not even sure whether you're doing it for yourself anymore. But at the Clubhouse, you know in your heart that you're serving the Clubhouse movement. It's crucial for people to believe that their work has meaning and fulfillment. They're doing something they enjoy, but it also contributes to the community. It's relevant to the community. The purpose of the work is to help build your self-esteem, your confidence, your sense of meaning and purpose. And that's really what the work order day is doing when you join forces with the rest of the members. It helps not only train you for work outside the Clubhouse, but it also helps build relationships. You know, if this were just a social club, only the most gregarious members would survive. The wallflowers would be in the back of the room waiting to be talked to. But in the Clubhouse, your work speaks for the person.
The impact that it's had on my life is just doing, seeing, and believing in myself in a different way. First, I kind of came with the idea that I wanted to socialize with people. I didn't want a job. I didn't want to do those things. And literally in a few months, that perspective all changed because I was like, well, if all of these people here can work and they're engaging and doing these things, why not me? It gave me such confidence that I don't think I would have been able to tap into if I hadn't come to the Clubhouse.
One of the main reasons why people join Fountain House is for employment. They have employment goals. And so the work that we're doing here is, A, to help people build the skills that they need to find work, but also it's a crucial part of the tools that we use here at Fountain House to aid in recovery and rehabilitation and to be able to allow members to use the skills and the things that they're learning here at Fountain House and that they're building on to be able to bring that into the real world.
I didn't like the job I had before Fountain House, so Fountain House has been a tremendous help with support. I'm a member at Culinary. I enjoyed the people at Culinary. What I do is I usually just do the cleanup.
I think what's really unique about Fountain House's employment program is that it's not a job-specific training program, and that's really intentional. Our transitional employment program is really about building the soft skills that are necessary to not only to work, but really to exist in the world in a lot of ways, to be successful at school, to get housing, to make new relationships. And those things look like showing up on time, appropriate conversation, how we're dressing, things like that come up in your day-to-day in an environment that at Fountain House, we may be giving feedback around that, but it's not as urgent, right? Because we're all social practitioners and members and friends. And when we're talking about this in a work setting, we want to make sure that we're being professional. And so it really allows people the opportunity to practice those skills. And it allows social practitioners to really get some feedback around what it is that people's strengths are, what they're doing really well, what they don't need that much support around, and what they maybe need a little bit extra support around.
I don't think I would have much success without Fountain House.
That story is an example of how clubhouses support a meaningful life and highlight the importance of addressing key drivers of social health. Here to explain how clubhouses achieve this through a therapeutic environment is Dr. Francesca Pernice.
The Clubhouse, as a psychosocial rehabilitative environment, relies on the fundamental principles of the person-environment interaction. Clubhouses do not offer traditional methods of therapy or clinical services, but a therapeutic environment facilitated by members and staff. We refer to this as social practice. Social practice sees each of us as worthy equals and aims to diminish the power dynamics typically inherent in traditional medical models and forms of therapy. Social practice is a process based on socially integrative practices reflecting respectful interactions that support recovery, autonomy, and healthy social connections. Staff are referred to as social practitioners. However, everyone in this model practices social practice. Social practice links existing theories and approaches through a unified language to work across professional disciplines. And we typically describe this through 5 initial elements in the Clubhouse. These elements reflect many of the social drivers of health for people living with serious mental illness. Let's take a closer look at these 5 elements. Transformational social design, also known as social design, informs us how to intentionally structure the environment to support social relationships, social connections, and build community. Relationship building emphasizes on developing these social connections, trustworthy relationships, and also the integrity and equity that each of us deserve. Engagement emphasizes the methods that create opportunities for members to feel the need to be needed. And natural feedback really addresses opportunities in vivo to emphasize personal successes, address some challenges, and support members in healthy decision-making and choices. And lastly, transitional environments. These include spaces and places that are typically outside the mental health environment, such as work, employment spaces, school, and other areas in the community that promote community inclusion. These elements help us to structure the environment, inform social interactions and relationships, and support autonomy, empowerment, and decision-making in one's individual recovery trajectory.
Education is so important. It's a huge factor in living a healthy, productive life. It's essential to people's self-image. When you have a good idea of a goal, it gives you a sense of purpose. And the way that we do education here, it's also a tool for community building. So we have a lot of member-to-member interaction, and then that looks like many different things. So we have like members tutoring each other, or we have members teaching in-house classes. So those are like member-taught classes. And that helps the teachers be able to present different information, and that helps members here actually practice going to school. So like they show up for a class every week, and all of that helps to build self-efficacy, autonomy, and overall better social skills that translate to if they go to school out in the community, or even if they do something like virtual school.
So a lot of times I would study alone, or I didn't really have a group of friends. So be alone, I have family, but they not interested in the same things as me sometimes. And I used to go to the library a lot. I still go. It's just now I have friends at Fountain House that are also working on their educational goals. So that helps a lot.
I told my unit I would like to go back to school, and they the community they helped me through the process of going back. It was easier getting help from them than doing it alone. So 15 years later, I'm back in college. I'm going to BMCC, Borough of Manhattan Community College, and I'm studying computer information systems.
When people come to the education unit, it's almost understood that we have a responsibility to each other to help motivate each other and be each other's support system. So we give members the tools to be able to do things like complete a FAFSA or, answer an email. Like things that we might think are trivial are really not. And when you have a whole community that backs you up, it makes it all the easier to do. So when we give members the tools to be able to do that for themselves, they then are able to help other people. And it's kind of like a domino effect.
I got accepted to City College. Like I'm gonna attend City College this fall 2023. So that's exciting. Majoring in electrical engineering.
I never thought I would be back in school and actually doing well and feeling supported, and that's all thanks to Fountain House and everyone in the community.
Like, it's nice to know that you have someone in your corner. So that's why we do student events every month, so that we can continue building that social network of students even outside of here.
If I hadn't have found Fountain House, I feel like I would just be really lost and trying to avoid the hospital, even if I may need to go. But I would be really lost. I would probably still I would be trying to figure out what the next step is.
I really appreciate Fountain House. I'm really grateful. I really thank you so much, Fountain House.
Hello, my name is Kevin Rice, and I'm the Director of Research at Fountain House. The evidence basis for clubhouses goes back over 50 years. Research has demonstrated the significant improvement and social outcomes attributed to the clubhouse model. Studies have shown that clubhouse members experience social cohesion, senses of belonging, and an increase in social support networks within clubhouse communities. These findings have also been associated with lower self-reports of loneliness, which current research is actively exploring further given the significant health impacts associated with loneliness and the disproportionate levels at which persons with serious mental illness experience loneliness when compared to the general population. Numerous rigorous studies have demonstrated the clubhouse model's positive impact on members' quality of life. This impact has been found to be most pronounced in the realm of interpersonal relationships and the expansion of social networks, both of which are areas the clubhouse model targets and seeks to support its membership in. The clubhouse model improves employment rates of members, which has been demonstrated through a number of empirical studies, with findings showing that members engaging with the model consistently demonstrating better employment outcomes in terms of duration of employment and higher payment. Particularly noteworthy is the positive influence on self-esteem and overall quality of life associated with competitive employment for members who participate in clubhouse employment programs. In the fourth domain of evidence, research showcases the clubhouse model's role in reducing overall healthcare costs. active participation in the clubhouse has been correlated with decreased psychiatric symptoms and decreases in internalized stigma and overall lower hospitalization rates for clubhouse members when compared to matched groups. Further research has also demonstrated that clubhouse programs reduce hospitalizations for clubhouse members, as well as lower drop-in rates and emergency room visits. These findings show clubhouse programs as cost-effective alternatives to partial hospitalization and inpatient stays. Beyond the existing evidence basis for the clubhouse model, clubhouse members, staff, and researchers continue to explore and examine the impact of the clubhouse model, furthering our understanding of what meaningful and sustainable recovery is and how to achieve it within and through community.
The Clubhouse model is international, and Clubhouse International was the organization developed as people were replicating this model around the world and looking at what Fountain House was doing. And so as it proliferated, there became the need to establish an organization to nurture that development. And that's when Clubhouse International was started in the early 90s. And now there are over 340 clubhouses around the world, but that's just a smidgen of what we need. So we're working together to really make this a part of every system of healthcare for people living with mental illness. There are 12 training bases around the world, and people attend training together, members and staff. There's a faculty composed of members and staff that are trained to evaluate clubhouses. There were standards developed in the early 90s by members and staff of existing clubhouses to really define what is this model and how are we doing what we do. And so those standards are used to help people replicate this model with integrity to what it is, and then the clubhouses are evaluated on their ability to do that and given accreditation.
The evidence is clear. Clubhouses can and do support the recovery experiences. Dr. C has more on that and is joined by Daniel Skaggs, a Clubhouse member and a recent medical school graduate, on the role clubhouses can play in fostering recovery.
One of the reasons I'm really passionate about sharing about clubhouses is that really in the whole time I was training as a resident, I didn't know there were clubhouses near where I worked where I could help my patients take advantage of a really important community support for their recovery. And, before I came into the clubhouse world, I actually spent a lot of time figuring out the nuts and bolts of integrated care. Figuring out how to put primary care into behavioral health settings like assertive community treatment teams. And one of the things I learned was that you could put medical and psychiatric services right next door to each other. You could even bring primary care doctors into people's homes if they were homebound. But what was most effective was when I timed the walk-in hours for our primary care clinic with a weekly lunch that we held for the folks who were served by our assertive community treatment teams. And people would come for lunch and karaoke and poetry readings. And they would not want to go into the doors of the clinic, but they might, at the poetry reading, show me a rash that they had on their arm and say, "What is this, doc?" And I could then say, "Well, I don't know. It's been a long time since medical school, but why don't you talk to my friend, Dr. Pavi, who is in the clinic?" And they would go to the clinic and find out that she was actually all right, pretty nice. And they would then be willing to see her for diabetes and other things. And we saw people's A1Cs go down from 14 to 8. And it was because of this community event that they came to the door of healthcare, that they built the trust that was required to address their social isolation and loneliness and got the care that they needed. When you know that someone you're working with is part of a clubhouse, you know that you can get a much greater understanding of who that person is. Not just the usual questions of, are you depressed? Are you sleeping? Are you hearing voices? But is this person someone who's teaching other people to make fried rice in the clubhouse? Are they leading a book club? You get a full idea of what someone can do. And when that person has a goal, for instance, to eat healthier, you know that they will have a group of friends in the clubhouse who can support them with that goal. So it's not just you telling them every 3 months, well, are you eating your vegetables? But instead, people might say to their friends, okay, I'm trying to drink less soda. And then every time their friends see them with a soda, they're going to be able to say, hey, I thought you had this goal. And that daily support for growth, that daily monitoring of growth really expands your reach as a provider.
One of the challenges of being a medical provider, I think, is that you're dealing with people at their most vulnerable, at their most unstable, at a really critical phase. And that's often how people are introduced to the medical field, to the psychiatric field. A diagnosis is usually not something that is thought of by the person themselves. It's sort of information received from the outside that sort of reorients a person and their life, which is often necessary to build this foundation of stability and security. But after that point, what's really important in this journey of recovery is really helping an individual rebuild their life. And it's really hard to do that if you see someone for a half hour once a month. And that person may have a huge number of issues and concerns and goals and dreams as well. And so this ability to really both have this additional part of the system, building just a larger team whereby an individual can talk about the things that they're doing in the context of teams, in the context of community. I've really enjoyed being part of the culinary unit at my clubhouse. I like making lunch. It makes me feel good to get that positive feedback.
We've spoken about how many people with serious mental illnesses come with fear and trauma, and that is often in relation to the medical system, because having a serious mental illness sometimes means that you've been in coercive situations that make you mistrust medical providers. And that's why a lot of people don't get the medical care that they need. But when a clubhouse is in the patient-provider relationship as a third member, what you see is that there is more trust between the patient and the provider. That when there are difficulties with that patient-provider relationship, rather than the patient just leaving, there is the clubhouse helping to support the rebuilding of that relationship. And the patient can feel empowered because they have the clubhouse on their side, behind them, to be more open with their provider, with their psychiatrist, tell them what's really going on with the medication. And then decisions can be made together between the patient and provider in a consensus manner, rather than in a manner that is top down with the psychiatrist telling the patient what to do. And then the patient is much more likely to work with the recommendations of that provider. So that's what we call the Rehabilitation Alliance, that the clubhouse backs up this relationship, supports it. And when you have been a provider that is vetted by and chosen by the clubhouse community, you can feel sure that people are much more likely to let down their guard and be real with you as a provider and tell you what they need.
My hope is that providers would come to see clubhouses as supporting their decisions. Clubhouses really as a way to make their jobs easier, to make your jobs easier, because you have this whole set of information, data, this idea that we kind of treat collateral as something that happens in a psych ward to figure out, oh, I'm seeing this person in a very extreme state. What are they like normally? Be able to build that into the everyday relationship, that even that once a month relationship whereby if a member can't advocate for themselves, they're not really able to capture, they can describe the things that they do. And maybe in that moment, it's going to come out with a level of intensity that may be concerning, but being able to, both a member to be able to advocate, hey, can you speak to my social practitioner, the staff worker that I work with in my clubhouse? They have a better idea of what I'm like on a day in, day out basis. You know, they know me when I'm trying to achieve my goals. They know me when I'm happy, when I'm successful, when I feel good about myself.
When supported by a clubhouse, a patient feels like they can be more open with their provider, and the provider feels like they trust what the patient is saying. Then we get a moment where we can have shared decision-making, consensus-based decision-making. And as a psychiatrist, I often feel more comfortable lowering the doses of medication to where possible, what we call optimal minimum dosing. Because I know that if I lower this medication and I go too far or too fast, there's a whole clubhouse supporting this person that's going to make sure that I know that this is not going well, and that is going to help this person stay safe and achieve recovery. And so I'm able to use lower doses of medication for that reason. A lot of the visitors we get who are medical providers are second-year psychiatry residents. So often they have seen people very ill in the hospital and have started to feel a little bit hopeless about psychiatry at that point. When they see people in the clubhouse on the other side of a psychiatric hospitalization, really like working to pursue recovery and make the most of themselves, that really gives people hope. It gave me hope when I first visited Fountain House to see what people could do in their recovery. And that helps psychiatric providers to keep on doing the very challenging work we do in the service of recovery. And so what do clubhouses need from providers like you? Well, it's three main things, right? One is referrals. Most of the referrals to clubhouses do come from psychiatric and medical providers who care about their patients and want to see them go to the distance. Knowing where the clubhouses are around you and how to make a referral is probably very important, and supporting the development of new clubhouses if where there aren't any. The second thing we need is really good continuous care for people with serious mental illness. One of the clubhouse standards is that the clubhouse supports people to access the care they need. And so clubhouses need to partner with psychiatric and medical providers in the community that they trust and that can provide a positive experience of mental health care and health care for people with serious mental illness that can reverse some of the trauma that people may have experienced through the medical system. What we aim to foster is a community system of care of which clubhouses are a part, where someone has a community that supports them and can access all of the things they need. And some clubhouses, have a partnership with one specific provider, and others have maintained relationships with a set of providers so that people can have a choice of the provider that fits best with them. But it's important, particularly, that clubhouses partner with a few key partners. One is mobile outreach teams. For the many people who are unable to come into traditional healthcare settings or who are homebound, clubhouses need to either provide or partner with services that go into the homes to see people. Many people with serious mental illness experience homelessness and housing instability. So partnerships between the clubhouse and housing providers and shelter providers is really important. And many clubhouses maintain their own housing as well to ensure that their members are well cared for. And many clubhouses partner as well with the justice system, offering Clubhouse as an alternative to incarceration so that people, when they come out of prisons and jails where they may have been because of their illness, they can have help from a whole community to reintegrate into life outside the prison. And that whole continuum of care make sure that we try to take care of the folks that have been left behind by the traditional healthcare system.
Summarizing today's program, here are the key takeaways. 1, recovery is possible for people with serious mental illness. And social practice engages Clubhouse members in an intentional community designed to support recovery, nurturing the need to be needed. Community-based interventions like Clubhouses may be a cost-effective solution to the lack of mental health services worldwide. And lastly, partnerships between Clubhouses and healthcare providers create a system of care that leverages the Rehabilitation Alliance to support members' recovery.
My hope for the future is that anyone who lives with mental illness is given all the opportunities to live a decent life and reach their full potential, that no one is denied that or felt as seen as not worthy, or the illness is seen as untreatable, rather to see the hope and potential and give everybody the dignity to move forward with their lives. And I think this model is just a unique, perfect example of what it takes to help people go on with their lives.
I think Clubhouses, in this concept of recovery, which is so beautiful, it is by each person's own definition. And that each person, each member of Fountain House, and each staff member who's watching people recover is learning about what that means for people going through it. And this sense that as a member of Fountain House, that I'm innovating in the field of recovery through my own experience. I can say, this is what recovery means for me. And I've seen these ideas and these experiences and the conversations I've had with fellow members and staff, that this is the type of thing that seems to resonate within the community. And that sense that really that you can participate in moving the field forward, and probably more basically that people get better.
We are seeking solutions for serious mental illness. And this model provides an opportunity to innovate and integrate people into our wider community.
Fountain House literally saved my life, or save me from the quality of life that I'm living now, improve the quality of my life, really.
Yeah, I'm just really grateful because it's really helped with my recovery.
And now I'll share my story. From the age of 15 to 19, I had been hospitalized over 20 times. At the age of 16, I was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. I had cycled through so many different psychiatrists, therapists, clinics, hospitals, medications, and really had no recovery in sight. But it wasn't until I found the Clubhouse that my life truly started to change. It was the partnership between the Clubhouse and my treatment team that truly gave me a meaningful path to recovery. And since joining the Clubhouse in 2018, I have been able to go from over 20 hospitalizations in 4 years to just 2 in the past 5 years. I've also been able to return to college and hopefully will be earning my bachelor's degree this December. I've also been able to lead a historic political campaign in the borough of Queens. And in addition to that, lead another nonprofit organization. And now I get to advocate for 14 million other people across the country, just like me, who too deserve a meaningful path to recovery, thanks to this partnership between the Clubhouse and my treatment team. Thanks again for joining us and for giving people like me a voice.